I was for a brief time a dot-com millionaire, but unfortunately my fortune vanished when the internet economy crashed in 2001. I kind of lucked into this non-fortune in the late 1990s. I was at the time working at a tax software company, which is actually a lot more exciting than it sounds. If there are any tax accountants out there in the audience, female, I am single. I would find you very interesting and more than a little sexy, but our company was eventually, it was bought out by a Dutch firm, and I guess the Dutch like tax even more than I do, and they sort of rather rapidly laid off our whole Toronto office. We just one day we got an email saying we were to attend a special offsite meeting at an airport hotel, and then we were supposed to attend it the next day, and that's where they sort of lowered the axe. They laid us all off, and that's when I sort of learned that there's basically an inverse proportional relationship between the amount of time between when a meeting is called and when it's held, and sort of the quality, the good news that's to come out of the meeting. So basically, Karl in my office now is rarely going to be a discussion about your year-end bonus, and I was quite blown away. I was laid off. I've never been laid off before, but this was the late 1990s, and we were experiencing what historians call a sort of an economic boom. And I got a new job, like 2 hours later, and I had 4 or 5 months severance pay now in my bank account. And my new job was actually contingent on me accepting sort of two offers. One, the company would move me to Seattle, Washington at their expense, and two, they would give me an outrageous amount of stock options that would, within a couple of years, would make me independently wealthy. So I basically, I only had really two questions for my new employer. One, do they have winter out in Seattle? And two, would American women like me better? And my boss, my future boss, sort of answered no, and I don't know, maybe. But what he discovered is that American women didn't actually like me better. I thought the Canadian accent would have some sort of power over them, but what he discovered is we're the only sort of former British colony that didn't get kind of sexy accents that make American women swoon. Like, never once in a bar did I hear a woman sort of come up to me and go, you said oot in a boot. I'm not wearing any panties. So it turned out that the Canadian accent is it's some place between like faintly irritating, like kind of like an AM radio station, not quite tuned to the right channel, and trustworthy. So, an American, he'll trust you to, repair his car or watch his wallet, but he doesn't want you watching his six in a bar fight, because, like a fight breaks out and the American thinks that the Canadian, the first thing you're going to do is grab a pool stick from the wall and then grab like a white dish rag and tie it to the end of the pool stick and start sort of waving it around, calling for negotiated end to hostilities. And but one of the interesting things about an economic boom is it becomes very, very hard to hire people. A generous salary is not enough to hire people. You have to sort of give them a lot of weird and interesting perks. And it sort of started off at a generous salary plus like a foosball table in the work kitchen, sort of show you're kind of a cool, funky company. And then it became like a free Coke machine, and then a free classic video game arcade, and then pool tables and ping pong tables on every floor, and then of course the stock options that are going to make everybody independently wealthy in 2 years, and they don't need the job anymore. So my company eventually, they sort of hit on this idea to give themselves the hiring edge. They installed free snack machines on every floor. These are, the snack machines that you go to, like, say, the bus station, and you put your money in and press F6 and you get a chocolate bar, or you press, H12 and you get a bag of chips. But these machines didn't require any money. You just press H6 and out comes the chocolate bar or the bag of chips. And And this was great, but after about 3 months, you kind of notice that everybody's waistline in the company began sort of expanding. And this is when I sort of learned that a free snack machine is kind of like Sauron's ring, that nobody, no one has the willpower to sort of go to management and say, get rid of the free snack machine. But I guess, fortunately, the internet economy crashed, and the snack machine went, and then the jobs went. And as I was sort of saying, I used to work at a tax software company, and I really enjoyed that job. And I worked at that company. I was sort of in my late 20s, and I worked with a lot of like women tax accountants in their sort of the mid 30s, late 30s. And one thing I noticed about all these women is they were sort of very bitter and resentful. They were sort of single. And so the more I talked to them, I sort of realized that they were bitter and resentful because they had this life plan that never sort of played out. They sort of thought, I'll get my CA, which is, a lot of work, and then I'll go work in public accounting, and I'll work with all these men who wear, crisp white shirts and nice suits, and I'll get married to one by the age of 30, and then I'll have my first kid by 32, and then by 40, I'll become a partner. And now they found themselves working at a tax software company with sort of nerds like me, and all the the invitations to go drink with these men in nice suits and crisp white shirts at expensive hotel bars were gone, and all that was left to them was nerds like me who would sort of kind of peer over their cubicle wall and go, you wanna come to my Babylon 5 party, and I thought to myself, I never really had a life plan. Like life just always turns out really good. I mean, sometimes there's a downside, but there's an upside, and it just sort of turns out really well. So, and I thought, but I was sort of pushing 29, and 30 was sort of looming, and all the horrors that 30 sort of presents itself. And I noticed that in my life, my non-life plan, I was not actually yet married, and I kind of. To that point, I sort of thought, well, if I just wait around long enough, someone's going to marry me. But here I was, sort of 29 and unmarried, and I guess my plan to just, meet a woman by sitting in the back of a Starbucks reading a Unix manual alone, kind of, that wasn't working out the way I thought it was going to work. And so I did eventually sort of meet this woman, and she was kind of like what psychologists would call a psycho bitch, and she was terrible to me, and she sort of left me feeling not only sort of unloved, but she left me feeling unlovable, and I found myself getting really, really bitter and resentful. But I didn't want to start feeling bitter and resentful towards women because you'll never get another date. So I thought, okay, I should get myself a life plan like all of my, single, bitter, resentful female friends, and it's got to be arbitrary, and it has to be unnecessarily rigid. So my idea was to, as I thought, okay, I'm going to get married by the time I have 1 million HBC points, which back then we called Club Z points. And while maybe it sounds crazy to you, to me, at least at that time, it sounded like very, very romantic, because I sort of had this idea. I would sort of get down on one knee, and I would sort of, propose to my future wife, and she would say, yes, Karl, this is the happiest day of my life. But little would she know, I had this ace in the hole, and I would say, I don't know, Alicia, all these years I've kept a secret from you. All these years I've had 1 million Club Z points or HBC points, and if you marry me, they are now all yours to buy some potholders or a deacon's bench or something. And I sort of thought, well, if the prospect of being married to me and spending the rest of your life with me is a 10, finding out if you marry me, you get also 1 million Club Z points or HBC points, that would bring it up to the proverbial 11. And so another thing I sort of learned at my tax software company is there are two kinds of workers. There are people who make mistakes on the job and they feel bad. And there are people who make mistakes on the job and they blame everybody else. And so if you're ever sort of wondering, am I a good worker, ask yourself, do you make mistakes? And if you answer yes, then ask yourself, do do I feel really bad? If you answer yes, then it's probably a good chance that your coworkers and your boss actually considers you a good worker. And the most extreme version of this I ever sort of saw was a translator named Carolyn. I worked with a translator. She was a really good translator. She could translate English to French and French to English, which is a very rare talent because usually you only go one way. And one day our head of technical support, his girlfriend had a daughter who was studying translation at university, and she needed a work term position. So the head of technical support asked Carolyn, could you take her on for the work term position? And Carolyn's like, yeah, no problem. So the young woman, she came to work with us, and she was a really good worker. And at the end of her semester, she gave Carolyn her some paper to fill out, like her work term report, and it had sort of a strengths and weaknesses section. And so Carolyn sort of filled out the strength section. She was a very good translator for being just a student. And when Carolyn came to the weaknesses section, she wasn't sort of sure what to put. So she just sort of put a couple things in there, like things that novice translators, mistakes they make, but things that will sort of smooth out as they gain experience. So she gave her the work term report, and woman went away. And a few months later, Carolyn was at the company Christmas party, and she saw the mother and went up to the mother and tried to talk to her. And the mother instantly sort of gave her this really nasty look, and in this very frosty tone, she said, how dare you try to talk to me after that horrible thing you wrote about my daughter on her work term report? And then the mother just turned her back and walked away. And then Carolyn, she couldn't think what was so bad on that work term report. And literally for 5 years, the next 5 years, she grieved every single day. What did I put on that work term report? And the young woman had graduated, sort of became a translator in her own right. And Carolyn would have to sometimes see her at events and conferences, and Carolyn would always avoid her because she doesn't want to repeat with her mother. But eventually Carolyn was going to be on this panel with the translator, and thought, I better bury the hatchet. I better go up to her. And so she went up to the translator and she said, several years ago, I think I wrote something really terrible on your work term report. I'm really sorry. And the woman's like, well, what are you talking about? And I don't know. Your mother told me I said something really bad on your work term report. And she's like, oh, my mother's crazy. Everybody knows that, and that was the best work term report I ever had. So, I guess ultimately you can care too much, right? Thank you.